institutions, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's so cool that this is streaming live.
I'll share my thoughts on that offline.
Okay.
I'm not
Yeah.
trying to be canceled.
We can talk about it offline, definitely. We're on
I don't want to be canceled, God forbid.
What'd you say? Listen, I have my thoughts too. It's a lot. It's a whole lot. So let's see. We're streaming live. And so I'm going to start the webinar because, folks are waiting. So let's see. Let me start this bad boy. Okay. Let's get into it.
Okay, let me share.
Hopefully, let me see. There you go. Early. Hey everyone. Thank you for joining. I'm just gonna wait for more people pop in.
Wait, I'm gonna send y'all about the topic. Someone posted something. I'm gonna just share it privately for y'all to see real quick while we wait.
Oh Lord.
Oh my God.
I'll review myself while I laugh.
I'm nervous.
I'm nervous too. You know what I'm thinking? I wish I had said this offline. Let me just 1 second. I'm gonna message her.
Oh.
Well, let me look.
Okay. All right.
That is hilarious.
Isn't that hilarious? Okay.
That is hilarious.
Wait, let me see.
Because I don't know why. Hi everyone, thank you for joining us. Just give us one moment. Okay, let's see.
Wait, cool. Where did you send it?
Instagram.
Oh, okay.
Hi everyone, thank you for joining us. We're just gonna wait a few moments for a few more people to come in. If you didn't mind sharing your name and your pronouns and what's your favorite hip hop song by a Black woman? I guess we can start off with that.
Yes.
Yes, as we wait for more folks to come in.
Oh, now I'm like, what's mine?
Yes, I have so many favorites. I just want to share while folks are coming in. The first thing that popped in my head is Little Kim Light Is Up.
Yeah.
When she come and start with, I come from Bed-Stuy, like what? It's a rap. Yes, yes.
I'm trying to think. One of mine is definitely I Can't by Foxy Brown featuring Toto. I listen to that song every day, every single day. I don't know why I'm obsessed with it, but it's such a good song. And
That's a good one.
It's Foxy in her element. I love it.
Honestly, the song that I've been listening to the most has been Sock It To Me, Missy Elliott and Da Brat. I love that video so much. It's just such a key to me. I can't get enough of it. So that's a hard question though. I feel like all of us could go off.
Forever. Oh, there's another one. You know what else I just started listening to a lot recently? The Heist by the Five Footers. What movie is that? It's Queen Latifah, Jada Pinkett Smith. Oh my God! Set It Off from that
classic. Yeah.
I don't know. I've been running that song back a lot too.
Yeah, remember Brandy did the Missing You, they did the Missing You on that soundtrack classic.
Mhm.
Okay, thank you for sharing that. I'm trying to figure out which one is my favorite and it's escaping me right now, but y'all have like some good suggestions. I wonder what our like attendees think. Please feel free to share your name, your pronouns, and your favorite song by a Black woman. And we're going to get started in the next couple of minutes. So just bear with us 1 second. It's so funny. I actually wasn't allowed to listen to quote unquote secular music growing up. So my introduction into hip hop was like a little later. But yeah, I just remember what is oh, the song by Little Kim. It's escaping me. But I just loved her outfits as a kid, and I always would try to like emulate her, and then I would get in trouble. So, yeah, it was one of those. Oh, thank you for sharing, Ozichi. I hope I'm saying your name right. Big Mama thing, Little Kim. Okay.
Too. She said, "Baby, it's a big mama thing. Can't tell by the carrots in my ring." Yes.
Yes. So how do y'all feel about starting in the next couple of minutes? I only say this because I think people thought it started at 5:30 and it's 5:05. But how do y'all feel about just starting the event? What do y'all think?
That's cool with me.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great.
I'm fine with it, yeah.
I'm trying to figure that one out over here. But anyway, we're here. It's International Women's Day. We're just going to rock with it. Hi, everyone. My name is Jamie Swift. I am the Executive Director of Black Men Radicals. I'm super excited for us to be here on International Women's Day to talk about Black women's interventions in hip hop, disrupting erasure and silence. So please feel free. We got this chat started. Feel free to share your name, your pronouns, where you're from, and what is your favorite song by a Black woman. Siobhan, she, her said Queen Latifah, Unity. So thank you so much for sharing that. Please feel free to drop that in the chat. So I just really want to establish this space. Like I said, it's International Black Women's Day. I'm going to just put that out there, International Black Women's Working Day. And we're here to celebrate Black women in hip hop, right? But we're also here to respect and learn from our amazing guests, who I will introduce shortly. But first and foremost, like I always do with Black Men Radicals events, this is a safe space. So no white supremacy, no homophobia, no queerphobia, transphobia, ableism, misogynoir. Y'all can do that somewhere else, but you ain't gonna do it here. Okay, so, and I will have to kick you out if so. But yes, I just want to establish that space. So, hey, Destiny, she, her, Foxy Bell, Foxy Bell times Foxy Brown. Okay. Thank you for sharing that, Destiny. So I'm really excited to introduce these amazing powerhouse Black women who sit on this panel, who are like hip hop scholars to me, because they teach me something every single day. And their work is so powerful in disrupting, like the event says, like erasure and silence around Black women's legacies and interventions and productions in hip hop. We always talk about certain things with Black women hip hop, like beefs and things and whatnot, but let's talk about their leadership. Let's talk about their productions. Let's talk about their work. So we're about to get started. I'm about to introduce our amazing guests. So first and foremost, we have SAMMUS, who also, her name is Enongo Lumumba-Kasongo, who is a rap artist and producer from Ithaca, New York, with a PhD in Science and Technology Studies from Cornell University. Excuse me, I'm trying to catch up to you. She is currently a postdoctoral fellow at Brown in the music department. She is also the director of audio at Glow Up Games, a women of color-led game studio, and she is a proud member of the Keepers Hip Hop Collective. Since 2010, SAMMUS has written, produced, and recorded 3 full-length albums, one of which charted on Billboard, 3 EPs, a collaborative video game-themed concept album with the MC Mega Ran, a critically acclaimed beat tape, and countless one-off collaborations with artists from a variety of genres, as well as video game developers, podcasters, and filmmakers. As noted by the Los Angeles Times, SAMMUS has a gift for getting a message across. So thank you, SAMMUS, for being here. It's wonderful to have you.
Thank you for having me. I'm so excited to be in the presence of such amazing, powerful, brilliant, melanated women. So please continue with the exceptional introductions.
Yes, because we're about to thank you for being here, and we're about to go into another exceptional introduction. I have to introduce the amazing Akua Naru, who is a hip hop artist, organizer, producer, activist, and scholar whose work centers social justice advocacy and community building. Her music, deeply nuanced, poetic, and wise, theorizes the myriad experiences of Black women through rhyme along a sonic spectrum from jazz to soul. She is the co-founder of the production/management company, The Urban Era, and to date has released 4 albums, The Journey of Flame, Live in the Flame Seasons, The Miner's Canary, and The Black is Joy, alongside a wide range of additional artistic content. She has recorded with Tony Allen, Eric Benet, Angelique Kidjo, Tune Yards, Questlove, Georgia Ann Muldrow, Christian Scott, Rod Digga, Mulata Astaki, Bernard Perdue, Cody Chestnut, and more. With her social justice work, Akua has collaborated with an array of individuals and organizations globally in order to instigate change. Akua was a Nasir Jones Fellow at the Hutchins Center for African and African American Research at Harvard University, and is the current Race and Media Fellow at the Center for the Study of Race and Ethnicity in America at Brown University. And last but not least, she is the founder and creator of The Keepers, which is the first comprehensive digital archive of the work of women and girls in hip hop. So.
Okay, yes, thank you for having me. It is absolutely lovely to be in conversation with you all today. Looking forward.
Listen.
Oh, what happened? Okay.
Oh, yes, you're so dope. I saw that yellow. I was like, oh, what happened? You're back. I'm happy to hear that. And last but not least, we have Nadirah Simmons, who is so amazing. Nadirah Simmons is a writer and creative from New Jersey, currently living and working in New York. She completed her undergraduate career at Rutgers University in 2016, where she majored in journalism and media studies and minored in Africana studies. Much of her undergraduate research explored the intersections of Blackness, womanhood, politics, and hip hop. Additionally, Nadirah interned with VH1, The Daily Show with Trevor Noah, Fox's Big Ten Network, and co-hosted 88.7 FM's Rutgers Recess. She previously served as a writer for Goodfellow Media and the hip hop magazine The Source, where she interviewed artists and actors and actresses, including Yvonne Orji, Jay Ellis, made in TYO, I don't know if I'm saying her name correctly, sorry, and Warren G. The idea came for the gumbo to her after graduating college when she was discussing with a friend how much visibility white people have in hip hop culture. So Nadirah is the founder of The Gumbo, which is the media platform and social club for Black women in hip hop. And as a lover of hip hop and an advocate for Black women, she felt it was important to create a space where the voices of women who are products of the culture are prioritized. 2 years later, she's serving The Gumbo. So thank you, Nadirah, for being here.
Yes, thank you for the intro. That was fire.
Listen, I'm trying to do everyone justice. I'm around, like I said, hip hop aficionados, so I'm here to learn too. So the first question, let's just jump into it, is about the theme of this discussion. Like I said, is Black women's interventions in hip hop, but we're about to get into some sub-themes about in this discussion. So the first sub-theme is Black women's legacies in hip hop. So oftentimes Black women's productions in hip hop from a more historical perspective are not really discussed or thoroughly interrogated. Can our esteemed panel speak to some of Black women's historical lineages, legacies, and productions in hip hop, and who are Black women in hip hop who are and were pioneering to the genre and the expansion of it?
Can I go first?
Yes, don't be scared. Anyone can
The
jump
thing
in.
is, so as you mentioned, we're building the first comprehensive digital database archive for women in hip hop. The thing is, our contributions to the genre have been so significant that any discussion on hip hop without including Black women at the center, you ain't talking about hip hop, period, right? So I can go on and on to the break of dawn, but I'll just name like one or two anecdotes. One is, for example, the first hip hop artist to receive an endorsement deal was Sparky D in the 80s with Mountain Dew. Which says a lot about, you know, the power of this, of a genre of music that in the early days, folks thought it was just a fad, right? The fact that, you know, Mountain Dew saw that there was some opportunity there. Let's invest in this sister. It also says something about her, her level of sort of visibility and power in New York City at the time. It was a radio ad, that's one thing. Another person, I mean, if we just skip forward to the 90s, I mean, let's go to something like Little Kim. I mean, if we look at 1996, even though we know that Kim came out with Junior Mafia before hardcore, obviously, but I mean, her impact, I think we talk about it, but I think we definitely need to offer a closer reading at, you know, we need to look closely at, you know, Little Kim. She became a model for, she pretty much changed the, you know, the face of sort of women's representation in hip hop, in the mainstream since 96, I mean, since hardcore. And I think that's very important. I don't think that there was any, and I'll just say this, I don't think there's any figure that was more, that had that power. No one, I don't think that there's anyone that can rival Little Kim in the power that she's had to change. And there are a lot of other things that we could talk about where some would say it's problematic. It's a lot to unpack here. So I'm not saying that without being aware that there's a lot of nuance to that statement, right? But it's undeniable.
And I'll jump in from the kind of production side of things because this, and I really want to give a shout out to the Gumbo in this space because they do a lot of wonderful posting and writing, but in particular, there's a real care and attention to the sort of lineage of sampling and production techniques that emerge throughout and across, you know, hip hop's history. And so that's, in many ways, that kind of work has not been understood as women's work or not been recognized as women's work. And of course, there are so many different ways to produce a record or a song, right? I think we should maybe start with that there we have very particular ideas about what it means to be a producer. And I think if you kind of stick with that kind of one-dimensional perspective around what a producer is, you lose sight of all of the different ways that women have contributed to different forms of music, right? I mean, I've heard folks who've had conversation about, you know, early hip hop kind of progenitors, the DJ Kool Hercs of the world, that a lot of their frame of reference was through the record collections of their mothers, right? And that provides the basis for you to then be able to have these records that you're seeking the breaks for, right? So that's one part of contributing to the sound, the production of the piece. But I mean, if we want to talk about a specific figure, Sylvia Robinson sits kind of at the top of that of that pyramid for me, just because of her, I think as Akua was talking about, her savvy as a business person, who was, I believe, co-owner of Sugar Hill Records and helped to produce, you know, the first commercially successful rap song, Rapper's Delight by the Sugar Hill Gang. And she was a kind of songwriter in her own right. She had records even before that I've listened to, kind of very sensual records that she put out into the universe. And so I think as someone who came into hip hop from the production side of things, I was always searching, who are the shoulders on whom I'm standing. And I think that's something that actively is erased, right? Like even kind of Missy Elliott, among her many, many contributions, I don't think enough credit is given to her as a producer and as a thinker in that regard, because she really is structuring a lot of the different works from, you know, Monica and Jodeci and all these other artists that we're so familiar with. She had a hand in crafting that sound, even as we understand Timbaland as being sort of the face of what that sound looks like. So yeah, I just wanted to kind of paint that picture as far as the work that that women have been doing in terms of the production work.
Yeah, I also want to say one thing before Nadirah goes about how great the gumbo is. My brother follows you and is like always like looking, and he loves hip hop, like loves it. So yeah, your work, everyone's work is amazing on this panel. I want to shout out the gumbo. Thank you for the work, Nadirah, that you do.
Thank you. Thank you for that. Yeah, and Sylvia Robinson was definitely the first name that came to mind when you asked this question. And also just the idea of the moms and the aunts and the grandmas and the people in the community who are creating spaces for any and everyone to rap on the stoop, to rap on their street, to rap in their homes, to rap in their basement, to be in their kitchen up late, creating space and creating space for people in music. I feel like those are the people who are often left out in the stories. It's like, obviously we have all of these artists and they deserve to have their stories told, but if there is no space for them to kind of create, what we have as far as hip hop doesn't exist. And I think to that point, I remember when I was doing my research on my thesis, one of the biggest things I found, and I can't remember who it was, I think their last name is Shabazz, and it was quoted in their book saying space is a fundamental element in hip hop, and it allows people to either enter or it allows people to exist on the outside. And that's me paraphrasing, but I just think that's so important, because when you think about people like Sylvia Robinson, you think about Wanda D, you think about Pebbly Poo, you think about MC Sha Rock, all of these great people who are early women in this space. You can't talk about hip hop without them. So I think those are some names that are just so incredibly important, and also acknowledging, even if someone's not on the mic, whoever is allowing you to go through their record collection, whoever is scratching and, you know, hyping up the party, if someone's emceeing, if they're doing graffiti, if they're dancing alongside you, like those are the people who also have contributed to the culture as well.
Yeah, I love how y'all were talking about like people's like elders and mothers, like bringing them into the fold. It even reminds me of like, there's a great book out called The Three Mothers, on a different note about like how the mothers of, I believe Malcolm X, James Baldwin, and I'm forgetting the other person, shaped like the leadership of their sons, right? And it's like, thank you for talking about how Black people and our elders are like cultural custodians, like, and really shape how we not only listen to, not only like politicize, but also how we listen to music, like what music we're listening to, how that impacts like how like their aesthetic and the style of dress. I think like black people, but particularly this conversation, Black women are the aesthetic of cool, and like where do we learn these different aesthetics? So and sounds, and who is making these major interventions in hip hop, and it's Black women. So thank you, Black women from all different backgrounds, whether it's the artist, your mother, your sister, your family friend. So thank you for sharing that.
And part of why I love this conversation too is because it allows us to move beyond, I think, like Western ideas about authorship and ownership of materials and ideas. Like, what would it mean to think about a piece coming together as like a community effort? And you know, when I think about apps like Spotify, which divorce the work, like the labor from the title of the song, you know, that the liner notes, the value of all of those contributions. It's so important to see all of the folks who went into making a song, or a piece. And so I just love how this conversation has focused on all of the different parts that go into making these amazing kind of cultural products, these things that resonate so deeply with us, that it's not just about the one MC. As dope as they are, they're the end result of kind of ancestral knowledge pouring into them, and the knowledge of their communities and the energies of their communities.
Definitely. Thank you for sharing that. So I guess we can move on into our next discussion on contemporary perspectives of Black women in hip hop. So you all gave like these important like pioneers to the field who changed the trajectory of the field in the historical aspect. But what has changed in regards to the trajectory of Black women in hip hop in the contemporary? And what are some positives and negatives and challenges of this trajectory?
That's a loaded question. I'm trying to give myself. I already seen the question, but I'm just like thinking, okay, like how do I want to? Give me 1 second.
I think that one thing that has changed right now, I'm just going to throw this out there and see if we, put that bull, just get it. Anyway, I think that right now, like because of social media and the power of the internet, for a long time, and I mean, I've interviewed women who were popping in the 80s, and they've said like consistently that it's always been this sort of idea that there could only be one. And if there were a few, it was like the one, lady of the crew, you know what I mean? Like beefing with the one in this crew, or they would have to be at odds with each other, right? And I think right now, what is interesting is that we're seeing with the success of a few artists, let's say in the last few years, you're starting to see more artists come forward. I don't know, like right now, like I don't know what we actually even consider mainstream anymore. You know what I mean? To an extent, like there are some artists that are very clearly mainstream, and then there are some artists that are kind of borderline. I'm not really sure where do you sit because of the power of social media, right? So there are these other artists, and I mean, and they're coming up quickly. Like, I mean, just from, let's say from between Kwanzaa and Valentine's Day, I learned about maybe 4 new artists that I hadn't heard of. And, like in the songs are popping, like people can recite them, like people are posting their videos, like it's a conversation because of that one song. Now this person is on the radar. I think that there's a wider, like there's more people in the room right now. And there are other questions that I have around that, because there are areas where I see some problems, you know what I mean? Like it's not perfect, but I do think that that's something that you see that's very clearly different as opposed to 10 years ago when there was just Nicki Minaj. And I mean, people were still talking about Trina, but it was like Nicki was like that mainstream artist for a very, very long time. And I think even the fact that you're seeing now, like I was just in the car today listening, I'm always listening to the radio just to hear what people are listening to. And I heard like Cardi, who's the one that has the song Tap In? Is that Saweetie?
Saweetie. Mm-hmm.
Saweetie. There was a feature with Mulatto. Megan was on the radio. I mean, within a 45-minute period. And I find that to be interesting because I think for a lot of people, maybe they didn't see that kind of presence since the mid-90s. And even that, I'm not really sure. You know what I mean? Because it was just a completely different world by which, certain channels would be carved out and one could gain audience and be heard. So I just want to throw that out there.
So I have a follow-up question for you, and anyone can jump in on that. So do you think with that there's an oversaturation of Black women like currently because there's so many different artists, or like you don't think it's good?
There can never be an oversaturation.
For real,
Abundance.
Give me more. Give me more.
I think there can be an imbalance as far as representations or you know, that there's not a reflection of the diversity of different perspectives and opinions and ideas and looks and shapes and sizes and sexual orientations. I think that that can definitely take place, and that's, you know, capitalism is going to do what it does. But I don't think we're even close to having any kind of saturation, whatever that would look like, of different, you know, Black women's voices. And just to speak to Akua's point, it's always difficult having this conversation, because I think right now there's a lot of, you know, this is framed as this moment of like a women's rap renaissance, and it really feels that way. But I also, there's like something visceral in me that sort of like resists that, because it's like, I know that there were so many women who were doing this kind of work between, you know, that period that's kind of framed as like the gap, you know, from the maybe like mid 2000s up until very recently. Like I was putting out work, Akua was putting out work. I know so many other women who were doing that kind of work, and now there are audiences that maybe didn't even necessarily know that these artists existed to kind of reflect those perspectives. So I'm like resistant to the idea that that the shift has been as drastic as I think it's often framed in kind of popular discourse, just to say that Black women have been here, they've been doing this, and people's attention maybe has shifted, but the work has been, you know, has been going on and on and on till the break of dawn, as Akua says. And the other thing that I'll say is that I think geographically things have changed a little bit. Like having to be tied to a particular locality has shifted a lot. Like, you know, I'm from Ithaca, New York. I'm from upstate New York. I don't see a way in which people would have heard my music 10, you know, 20, 15 years, 25 years ago, if I were not actively a part of different scenes, if I were not trying to kind of ingratiate myself with folks in New York or other kind of bigger spaces. Like it would be really, really hard to pop. I think we have a lot more access through the power of SoundCloud and Bandcamp to be able to communicate and connect with people across the world. And that's part of I think the momentum is like, now y'all don't want to give me a label or a deal, that's fine, because I'll find my people by putting my stuff online.
Yeah, to that point, I think it goes back to what I said earlier, just about space too. When we talk about what has changed as far as trajectories, is creating that space. So even if you're online, like this is a digital space that we're in right now. This Zoom is a digital space, and we've created this space to talk about this exact thing. Bandcamp was one of the first things I thought of, where people are now not reliant on, okay, how do I get this to this person at this label or on this DSP, and also make sure it shows up on the homepage of this DSP. You can literally go and put out an album and say, hey, it's $10, but you can pay more. And people are making bread off of doing that. And it's not so reliant on the spaces prior that may have shut them out. So I think the biggest thing that we see now is I can have a digital space. I can have my own space in the real world. I know it's COVID, but I can still create my own space within my own community. I can create a space, even if I am all the way upstate, I can create some, you know, like just so many different communities and spaces online and in real life that I think without social media and a bunch of other things, but that's the biggest thing that comes to mind, we wouldn't have been able to do in the 90s or even the early 2000s.
Akua, I feel like you wanted to chime in before, or do you want to say anything, a follow up to that? But yeah, you can just, I can see your face. I don't know why you want to say it.
I was kind of like a double Dutch cross point between a few things that I heard. So I don't even know where I am with this. Y'all, you know, pick up the pieces. Remember that? Pick up the pieces.
I'm dead.
Pick up the pieces. So here's the thing about, you know, whether the market is oversaturated. Like, absolutely not. Like that, it could never be.
Mm-hmm.
But I do think that there is something very interesting happening that we really need to take seriously, and that could potentially be low-key dangerous. And I'm just going to go ahead and say it. I think that, and it's true, like because there's this sort of mainstream space that's kind of fluid, right? Because And because I'm not sure exactly what it is. The thing about the hip hop community now, like, look, in the 90s, it was like something you could sculpt. Like I could hold it. We can measure it. Like this is where it's located. It's right here, right? Like where Brooklyn at? Where's the real hip hop? It's right here, right? Today, it's like when we say the hip hop community, I'm not even, I mean, I know that it's real, it exists, but it's like, it's so far, like the lines have been so blurred into all of these different spaces. Like Nadirah was saying, like it's hard to, right? And I think that when we think about, I mean, so that's the beauty of the internet, right? Like, you know, there's so many different artists like myself, like SAMMUS, like, you know, Sarok, like, you know, sisters who are out here, you know, we're doing our music and we find our communities and we're able to like work and survive as artists, you know, because there are people, there are listening communities like all over the world who are ready for it, right? And we've been able to dig out these channels. But I do think that what is really interesting that's happening that we need to take seriously is the way in which there are certain kinds of images, certain narratives, certain imagery, a certain very, very limited script around what it means to be a Black woman and to be visible and be amplified, like in this particular moment. And this has been happening over time, you know what I'm saying? But, you know, and it's like, it's very, very limited. And it's like these three narratives, like these three themes, like these three outfits, like these three ways of embodying and like inhabiting space and like performing. And like, once you're aligned with that, you have a greater chance of being heard. But like SAMMUS was saying, we know Black people, we got 59 names. I mean, what name are we using in this space? You feel me? Like my dear sister, the professor, the MC, the producer, SAMMUS was saying, it's like, it's like, yeah. Anyway, I just wanted to throw that out there. I lost my thought because I was laughing at my own joke in the middle of my own flow. And so I'm gonna just put that out there. But I do find that to be very dangerous because for, you know, these artists in that 45-minute span, for example, there are certain things that are very similar that you can pretty much, you know, that are obviously similar, but there's other narratives out there. And like she was saying, like in the last 10, 15, 20, 30, 35 years, we've been out here doing this work. The question is, who is able to occupy that space? Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? At the highest level, at a certain height of amplification and visibility. And I find that to be gravely problematic.
I'm coming up with these follow-up questions, y'all. I'm sorry. For SAMMUS and Akua particularly, and I would love, Nadirah, for you to chime in on this from a scholar, researcher, historical perspective. Do you think because of these inconsistencies, like how does that impact like your artistry and your work as powerful Black women in hip hop who do have a certain politic? And who are activists and who are, I mean, you know, you censor Black women, like, can you both speak to that? And then also, Nadirah, could you possibly speak to like the historical aspects of Black women who have a certain politic and how they're not really centered in the mainstream discourse? I'm sorry, that was a big question, but I had to do it.
There's a lot here, I think. And again, I just want to echo how grateful I am to have this space. One of the things that, you know, we were talking about COVID earlier and how difficult this past year has been, but I am grateful because of the relationship that I've been able to build with Akua and just being able to be in conversation with another woman who operates in the space of hip hop as a lyricist and as a producer, as a touring artist, has been really gratifying for me because I've been able to see myself and have conversations and express my deep frustrations with a lot of the kind of work that goes into trying to sustain yourself as a Black woman with a particular politic in the space of hip hop in 2020. And so to kind of get to your question, I think, one of the challenges for me is that I often feel like I don't know if this is the right way to put it, but writing against this narrative, like that there's this narrative or idea about, Black women or, Black women MCs or whomever you want to kind of put into that bucket, that I feel like when I write, I have to keep that in my mind as I'm putting words together. And so that frustrates me. It frustrates me that when I put out a song, someone will tweet me inevitably and say, oh, I'm so glad that you are a conscious rapper. You're not like Cardi B or whoever. That they actively position me and complimenting me. Like, I can't just be a dope MC. I have to be a dope MC in relationship to this. You have to put somebody down, or you have to kind of like frame me within this discourse that I never even asked to be a part of, So I think that's a huge challenge and frustration of being a woman operating in this space. I mean, even artists who are, supposedly at the top have expressed this frustration, right? Like, I know Cardi B has said, you all won't buy songs from me if I don't talk about my pussy, right? Like, if I wanted to discuss other things, you wouldn't be here for it. So this is the position that we find ourselves within. So I think, Akua's music is incredible and speaks to her love of Black women and Black people across the world. And it's frustrating to me that more people don't know about her work. It's frustrating for me that when I write, I don't, how many people will hear this? And part of what we can talk about later is that this leads to then the erasure. This leads to women saying, I don't want to do this anymore. That why am I going to pour myself into this? Why am I going to spend years of my life trying to articulate my ideas about the world if it's not going to be heard and understood and unpacked with the same care that, all of these other pieces of art are done for artists who don't look like me? So I think, just to kind of wrap it up so I don't go too long on this, I think it's a challenge trying to write in this space, because I'd be lying if I said, oh, I don't care who listens to me. I don't care if I'm her. I'm just writing for myself. That's dishonest. I want people to hear the work, but I'm frustrated by the systems that continue to keep it in one place. There's a lot of doubt that ends up coming with that, feeling like, am I doing the right thing? Am I making the right kind of art? Is my music any good? Am I really as dope as I think I am? Like, all those questions sort of unfold. So it's a challenge, Jamie. It's a challenge.
Can I jump in here? Yes, you are really as dope as you think you are, as I know you are. I've been listening to this right here. I ordered this. She had, this pieces in space joint. I've been listening to the vinyl because I couldn't, I can't do the MP3, and I want to hear the real crackle in my ear, the snap, the crackle, and the pop. Okay, the whole Rice Krispie. The whole kid caboodle. Listen, yes, that's the thing. It's like, it's beautiful that we're often in conversation and we can talk about it, SAMMUS, because it can be a very lonely space, especially when you feel like you're called to speak. Like you said, like when you have a particular politic, right? So much of the work is motivated by our love, for our people. I think for me, what frustrates me is that, and I think we talk about this pretty much all the time, it's like, I feel like, as a woman, as a Black woman, as a human being, it's my right to feel the extent of that range of what it means to be a human being, being a human being, doing the things that human beings be doing, right? And I feel like there are certain, certain worlds of hip hop that want to put me like, I want to force me like right here. But what about that range? And it's like, and I feel like, in 50 years, hip hop is fairly 50 years old, just about. There's this entire world of knowledge you know, of women's interiority that we've been not denied access to. So much we could have learned if we imagine through all of these men how we've seen ourselves, you know, how they've talked about intimacy and love and sex, relationships, fatherhood, you know, what it's like to have to embody and exist in certain certain experiences, like, you know, being incarcerated, being illegally searched, you know, being profiled and targeted, being hunted, like what it means to be Black men in America, living in poverty, you know, living lavish, you know what I mean? Like that whole range. Like there are some men who are denied a certain kind of range because of how sick this whole corporate machine is, and like, you know, what that means, and like what that forces you into. But I feel like for me, I want to hear the extent of that range when I hear women speak. It can't just be carnal. Everything can't just feed the body. Of course the body is a beautiful thing. It's my vehicle, and like I'm able to sort of become animated through it. But there's a heart here behind, you know, like Toni Morrison talks about that heart that beat like a clenched fist behind her ribs. Like I have one right here, and I want that to be spoken to. I mean, what about these generations of women who make we could freestyle to the end of time about all of these different experiences that are not recorded. And maybe some of them have been recorded. And that's why the work that we're doing with this archive is so important, to go and like excavate them and bring them and then collect them in one place and make them available to folks. And that's the reason why, all of that to say, that's the reason why the work that SAMMUS is doing and countless other sisters out here, because we out here, that's why it's so important, because this to me communicates that range. I feel that I hear a humanity in all of this. And that's not what, you know, I heard in that 45-minute ride, to be honest, on the radio today.
I think too, when you talk about narratives, and I'm coming from this as just a hip hop fan and someone who documents this stuff and will listen to any and everything just because I love it. I think you look at the history of Black people in America and the history of Black women in America in particular, and the stereotypes that have been placed upon us, and how much grace we're given and how much space we're given to move out of those stereotypes of, hey, you're this, or you're this, or if you're acting like this, then you're this. And I think when we talk about the art that we create, because hip hop is art, and I also feel like sometimes we forget that this is a creative, this is not just I don't know, like this is tremendous art, and it comes from the heart for so many people. When you talk about, not my email going off, my bad, y'all. When we talk about Black women in America specifically, because we could talk about hip hop outside of this country, but the stereotypes that we face in our day-to-day lives, that we face in academia, that we face in, you know, our spaces when we're outside, obviously are going to impact our art that we create and what we're expected to create. And I think it's so difficult, but we always say, hey, this wasn't that long ago. When we talk about the history of Black people in America, like, hey, don't y'all forget, this was like 50 years ago. This was only, you know? So I think when you think about it in that way, it's us continuing to create these spaces like this and continuing to create the music, to their point, which they're doing. And I'm not an artist, and I could only imagine how much work and how difficult it could be. I can only speak from, even as someone documenting this stuff on the gumbo, there have been times where people are like, oh, well, what about this? Or why would you highlight this? And you can't forget about that, or that's that. And there's like this stereotyping that sometimes is done because there's this expectation of what Black women who are within the hip hop space should be, could be, and would be. And I think it's a lot there, and it's so loaded because those are stereotypes that exist outside of this cultural space that we've created that have to be demolished and have to be unpacked and have to be talked about. And it's unfortunate sometimes that those narratives will cloud the art that some people are making. And I just hope that the work that is being done, and even this conversation, contributes to the future, so that now down the line, maybe a year from now, 2 years from now, or it could be 20 years, whatever it is, somebody will be able to make something and it won't exist in the same way. And they'll be able to go out and exist as multidimensionally as they want to. And the biggest thing for me is just always remembering Black women, we're multidimensional. We don't often get the opportunity to be this one day and this the next day, which is human, which is inherently human. We as Black women are rarely given that grace. And I think that's something to remember when we talk about just the consumption of what we do in hip hop.
Yeah, I'm thankful that Nadirah, you contextualized it to the grander structural issues that Black women go through each and every day. And then I also think about, it's not only just Black women in hip hop in the United States, but transnationally. And that's what I love about The Keepers, is like, it documents like this global Black women's like, contributions and productions in hip hop. Yeah, like from around the world. I think I saw that you posted Akua on either your page, your IG, or The Keepers, about Preta Rara, the Brazilian, Black Afro-Brazilian hip hop artist. I mean, who was once a domestic worker, who I cite in my dissertation, who has a book out talking about Black women domestic workers and just like her music. So talking about like uplifting fat Black women in Brazil and equity and rights. And so I thank you for the work that The Keepers does, because I'm really excited to see this archive, which is also why I'm excited about this conversation, because what you and the Gumbo do, the Keepers and the Gumbo, both of y'all do, or everyone does, is just so powerful. Because I can honestly say I'm learning from you, and I don't know much about Black women in hip hop, just like the certain names that, most people know. And in my research, I come across these different names, but you're really highlighting and spotlighting different women who probably wouldn't get as much shine, and who are not given as much shine. And so thank y'all so much for that. So the next sub-theme, we're going to talk about strategies and interventions in the futurity of Black women in hip hop. And so I already gave everyone some props about what they do and how your work contributes to the future of Black women in hip hop. But my question is, how are Black women creating strategies and interventions in regards to obviously disrupting erasure and showcasing the amazing creativity and talent of Black women in hip hop? And how are your platforms doing this work? And y'all can speak more about the work you do with your respective organizations.
Talk about the gumbo.
I was like, wait, this is about to go. So I definitely think the biggest thing for me and for the Gumbo, as far as strategies, is making sure that there are Black women who are documenting this. One thing that I found just throughout my just work experience, and when it came to writing about music and writing about hip hop, is that a lot of the people existing around me didn't really look like me. And that was something that I found just to be truly crazy. I was like, yo, what's going on? Like this should be talked about in this way. And only a person who is Black and a woman could really, give this what it needs. So my initial idea for the Gumbo, I've told this story before, but I saved up a whole bunch of money for like a year straight. And I was like, I'm going to hire women to pay them to write about whatever they want to in hip hop, whether it's about the fashion, whether it's about Black women's sexuality, whether it's about their love for hip hop, whether it's about when they got introduced to hip hop. And I think that's one of the biggest things for me that I've just always prioritized, is making sure that Black women are the ones who are doing this work, who are getting paid for this work, because I also know oftentimes we're not compensated fairly or at all when it comes to our creativity and our talent. And that's something that is so important to me, which is why I saved up my money from my jobs. Like, you know what, like this is what we're going to do. We're going to make it happen. And I think that's just one of the biggest things, is making sure I am creating space for Black women to talk about hip hop and to get paid to talk about hip hop, and also to write about hip hop. And if they want to, they have a song, like sending over the song and like featuring that, like just giving women, and I feel like I've said the word space so much, I'm like, what other word can I use? But truly giving people that space, so that there is no erasure, that there's no room for someone to say, no one's ever written about or talked about this. And I could be like, Luke, actually over here, we done thought about that a year ago, and there you go. Or for someone to say, I don't know if there's a producer or a DJ or whatever in this part of Jersey. We can be like, hey, actually, we got this right here for you. Here's this person that we featured. And I think that's the one thing is just, and it's a lot of work, a lot of research, takes up a lot of time, but just making sure that in the best way we can, that there's no room for someone to say, hey, this does not exist, or hey, I don't know about this person, or there's no one in such and such town that does this. Or if I want to work with a producer out in wherever I stay at, like, I don't know any Black women producers out here. I always want us to be able to give people history, to give people context, and also give them people that they can work with and compensate. Those are like the biggest things. And then also making sure that those are Black women, because we can't be omitted from a culture that we helped create.
I feel like you hit us with the whole kit and caboodle. I don't even know what I can add to that, because that's exactly like probably what, I think that's exactly like the fire that, you know what I mean? It's just that supports, the work that we do, that pushes us forward too. It's like, for me, I always think about, 50 years of this sort of knowledge and information, and 50 years of access that has been stolen from that has been hidden from us, right? Like there's an inheritance that we just didn't get. And I could sit and be frustrated, because I very often am, right? But I want to do the work. At some point for me, like I've been recording music and writing rhymes pretty much my whole life. And it's like, I will continue recording and touring and performing and making music, whatever. But I wanted to, I felt like there has to be more. By the time I got to Harvard and I had this time to just think about what I wanted to do, and of course I had to submit a project. And the project for me at the time was, look, I wanted to create a master list of women's rap recordings, and see and just start collecting and see what I could find. And my mind was blown to see that there was so much information out there. And I think that I know quite a bit, but I was very, I found myself surprised time and time again. And then I would talk to other folks who, knew a lot about hip hop, many of them knew more than me, and they felt the same way. And then I felt like, oh, I'm on to something. By the time I stumbled upon this idea of the database, I had collected so much data. I had excavated so much data and collected it in a certain way and organized it in a way that for it to be legible to me, for me to access in a quick and sort of easy way. And then I started to show it to other people. Everyone was like, wow, this is amazing. I mean, I think, SAMMUS, you've seen it, a little sort of prototype. And then, I pretty much, that's how the archive was born. I thought, wow, wouldn't it be amazing if we can create a resource that would be available to the public for free, so that they never have to say the things that Nadirah just outlined for us. We never have to say, oh yeah, but nah, like Black women never, hold up, what you say? What you say there? Because I got this resource right here. Like you never have to say, in the 80s, you feel me? Nah, the sisters, what, whoa, now hold your horses. There is a resource here that contradicts everything that you're saying. I want to work for Black women. That's clear. Whether it has to do with me spitting bars on this microphone, or me, going into the crates, like whatever it's going to be, like that's the work that I want to do. Like, and so, I basically just started building this archive myself, and then the pandemic sort of gave me the opportunity to really think about how I can invite other folks in who felt as passionately about, centering, uplifting, collecting Black women's work, documenting, our artistic work throughout hip hop history, herstory. And so now we're here. And but for everything that you just said, Nadirah, like I couldn't have said it better. for all of those reasons, that's why we're doing the work. That's why I'm doing it.
Yes, and I just want to highlight what both of you said, that the importance of who's telling the story, can't underscore that enough. I have one anecdote. I remember coming across or learning about Wonder Girl, who she's a producer. She produced a beat that ended up on Jay-Z's Magna Carta Holy Grail. And it was incredible to me because that didn't show up in any mainstream feminist anything. Right? Like folks were heralding Taylor Swift as like, oh, she's, she writes her own music and this is so incredible. And it's like, here's this 16-year-old girl, right? Who just like produced a work that is on one of the biggest rappers of all time's record, and there's no engagement. And so that's where the intersectional part comes into this dialogue, right? That even amongst the folks whom we consider to be our allies and sort of mainstream feminist media, we're still overlooked. And so I think both of these efforts are so critical because they're centering Black women's experiences. And we have a particular angle and lens and relationship to the work that allows us to, I think, excavate the fullness, I think, as Akua is kind of getting at, that there are so many layers that are overlooked when you don't have sort of the critical lens that I think many Black women bring to this work. So I'm so appreciative of the work that you all are doing, and the recognition, Nadirah. Again, I just want to highlight how important that work is from the artist perspective, because we spend so much time trying to get visibility from these publications, right? Like, well, a lot of the work of the artist is trying to be seen and engaged by people who actually fucking get it. And so often that doesn't happen. So often we're not, the care, thought, understanding that goes into other bodies of work doesn't exist. So it's wonderful to know that on that side of things, you've got it handled, like that's exciting.
And I just wanted to add the fact that we rap. That's what makes this archive so delicious. I mean, that we're women who rap.
And nutritious, yes.
Yes, and nutritious, yes, indeed. It's like, to be, just to be among this cohort of people who feel the same way, but also do this work. Because I feel if you're a woman who raps, it's a very unique positionality. We on the front lines, like, it, like we're fighting from the inside of the body itself. You know what I mean? So like when SAMMUS talks, like I feel it, I feel her when I'm listening to her, it's absorbed into me. And I just feel like, it's just like Popeye when he just ate a can of spinach. It's like, ooh, I'm energized, I'm ready. You know what I mean? And I just feel like that makes it so much sweeter, because even as I was interviewing other artists, it's like, it just made it so much easier for me to jump right in there and be in that conversation, and to under certain things we could just bypass, because I know the questions you hate. So we're not even gonna go there. We could just get right to it. Hey, Martha, how you doing?
Hey.
Yeah, and I'm also, thank y'all for sharing, but I'm also thinking of this, like how typical is it of Black women to do like the grassroots, community-driven, hood, guerrilla, maroon, quilombo, like community organizing to get our narratives and stories centered with no money, with no support, with no like big financial backing, and then to like cultivate and curate the space, and then secure your name, and then making sure all this, paying people, paying yourself, that takes a lot. And like I said, I'm a student I'm learning from y'all, but knowing and doing the archive of Black women radicals, I can understand, like, you come across all this information and it's like, wow, like you're doing it for the future generations of Black women and girls and gender expansive people to be like, I need to know who Marielle Franco is, or Ella Baker is, or Fannie Lou Hamer is. It's like the same thing in hip hop. And so, but it's always typical of Black women to, like you said, Akua, to be at the vanguard and get the job done. So Yeah.
Jamie, I want to touch on the money aspect, but I also feel like the question in the Q&A, I could save this answer for then.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, whatever you want to do, because listen.
I just definitely feel like it is. So I mentioned how I had saved for an extended period of time to make sure I was able to pay the writers. And it got to a point where I had spent a lot of money and it was my money. Like all my bills were taken care of, but I also was not really saving because I was paying Black women, which is extremely important. But I think that speaks to the point of, when I started this, I was like, hey, I'm just going to make a little Instagram. We're going to have a website and people are going to write and it's going to be fun. And then everyone's like, no, like you got to go do this. You got to go fill out this paperwork. Now this needs to be this business and this needs to be written in this way. And just the amount of, or the lack thereof when it comes to access for us, when it comes to capital, because I have other projects that I work on, and it's so difficult. And I'm sure that they could speak to this as well, how it's so important to have capital when you are trying to do these things, because sometimes you're not able to kind of reach past whatever threshold you want to without that. And I just think that's something interesting to think about when we're talking about the work that we are doing and the work that we love doing, but it's also still work, and it still requires paying for. You can't have a website without paying for a subscription for the website for a year, whether it's Squarespace, Wix, whatever you're doing it on. That's money. You want to have people that come in and you want them to write for you. If you're doing it the right way, you should be paying them. You want graphics done, you have to pay for that. If you want merch to represent your brand out in the world, you have to pay for that. And I think when we look at just the structures around us that have made it so difficult for us to have access to capital, and to not have the generational wealth that another person may have because of just their history within this country. I think that's something that I always think about. And it's something that I'm kind of moving into a new space with the gumbo, where I'm thinking about, okay, in order to sustain this, we do have to have some sort of capital. And it's tough and it's difficult, because that is something that gets in the way of so many other women like us being able to do this work, is not being able to take the time at night in between whatever job they have to work on this, because they have to get their rest to get up and go to their job, whether it's an 8-hour workday, a 12-hour workday, or a 16-hour workday. That's the difference between, hey, bringing in another person and having them work with them, or them putting all the time out by themselves and kind of working themselves into sickness or sadness or whatever it could be, because they're overextending themselves because they don't have the capital to bring in a person to help them. And that's just something I always think about when it comes to talking about money, because entities like this and the work that we are doing, it is so difficult to do this when we don't have the same access that people who are not Black women so easily get and so often get.
Yes, thank you for sharing that, because listen, I already know how it feels to be a one-woman team and trying to like do everything without saving money, and so the work that all of y'all are doing is just so remarkable. So thank you so much. So this last question, and then we're going to get into the Q&A. I wrote a quote from Toni Morrison, because I know how Akua and I did an IG live like a month or so ago. And when I was speaking with her, first of all, you said white supremacy tried to take your screen out, but we could still hear your voice. But the way that Akua talked about Toni Morrison, I was like, oh my, the love, it's even beyond love that Akua has for Toni Morrison. So the quote is, during a 1992 lecture, Toni Morrison said, if you can't imagine it, you can't have it. So one more time, Toni Morrison said, if you can't imagine it, you can't have it. In regards to the future of Black women in hip hop, what do you imagine it to be? What do you hope to see? And how is your work contributing to this future? I know y'all touched on it before, but yeah.
Also, I just wanted to add, thankfully, I have a team now. I got 2 people on the team. So shout out to them. They're the best. Quinn and Brooklyn. Okay, now I'm gonna think about my answer.
Can you ask the question one more time, Jamie?
Sure. So the quote that, I mean, during a 1992 lecture, Toni Morrison said, "If you can't imagine it, you can't have it." So in regards to the future of Black women in hip hop, what do you imagine it to be? What do you imagine the future of Black women in hip hop to be? And what do you hope to see? And how is your work contributing to this future? I didn't know that was going to be such a hard question. I'm sorry, y'all.
It's crazy because I also read it before, but now I'm just like, dang, maybe I want to answer it a little differently. Hold up.
Yeah, just like what your hopes and your thought, your like, what are your hopes for and your dreams for the future of Black women in hip hop?
Well, so the first things that come to mind for me, I would love to see labels where Black women are in charge. And I also would love to see, when we speak to us being multi-dimensional, every part of us being tended to and taken care of. And I'm sure y'all can speak to this as artists, but we've seen it in documentaries time and time again, where someone's like, hey, this part of my life was going really, really well, but I wasn't really doing good over here. My mental health was in this space over here, and my money was in this way over here. So the biggest thing for me is making sure in all of music, and especially when it comes to Black women, is making sure every part of our lives is tended to. And I know that seems very easy to say, but I want someone to be able to go into the studio and make a song and also be able to come home and talk to someone if they have to. I also want them to be able to come home and be able to pay bills to take care of said home. I also want people to understand, and I don't even fully understand. I listen to podcasts where people talk about their contracts and I'm like, oh God, like that don't sound right. I want people to be able to have someone who's in charge, who's tending to them and making sure, hey, this is what you're signing and this is what it looks like. I want Black women to have ownership over their music. I don't want anyone to be able to sell the rights to their music to all of these other entities, or at the very least be able to make a lot of money off of it. I think that is the biggest thing for me, and not because it's purely about money, but because the ownership over our work is so important. And I think too often in history, Black women create, and we've seen what we've done get recreated by someone else and now it's theirs, or someone else has, yeah, they did that, but I'm gonna put my name on it and yeah, whatever. So I think that's the biggest thing for me, is just ownership, autonomy, and care being given to us. And I think with the gumbo, that's the biggest thing. Hey, when you want to talk about this is your piece, you own this. When you have this song, like, we're going to share this because this is yours, and we want it out into the world, and we want everyone to hear it. We want you to have that autonomy to talk about all of the other things and to exist in a way that we often aren't given the space and the grace to.
As Akua says, the whole kit and caboodle. Like, wow, that was, I mean, damn, Nadirah. Yes, ownership, autonomy, and care. That's the motto. And I just, the only thing I can add to that is that on the most intimate level, that when an artist or a soon-to-be artist is crafting something, as a Black woman crafting something within the hip hop tradition, that she doesn't feel that she has to, woman or girl, non-binary artist, doesn't feel that they have to write against or alongside these harmful myths and stereotypes and tropes and ideas about who they are and who they can't be, that the space is so free and enables them to play in their fullness and express and explore that without the weight of centuries on their shoulders as they're writing. And that when that thing comes into being, they can share it with 2 people, they can share it with 1,000 people, but feel safe in doing so, and know that there's a community of people that are supporting them in their expression. I think for me, that's what I hope that my work as an artist can provide someday down the line for other, you know, women and girls, non-binary folks, Black artists who are entering into the spaces that I'm trying to create. And I think through the Keepers work, the thing that animates me is being connected to these other narratives, knowing that I'm part of a longer conversation. It's so special. I think feeling like, wow, I'm just an extension of all of these amazing women who came before me, that they're all contributing to this thing that I'm trying to bring into being. There's something really freeing about that. So that's kind of my hope and some of the amazing work that I see being done through the Keepers.
I don't have much to add because so much has already been said, and so beautifully at that. I want to see a radical reorienting, you know, a new point of entry in how we talk about, how we language, right? Hip hop, how we historicize the genre. Like we need a new point of entry where we are at the center, and like folks know, you know, an honest history, an honest herstory of this, you know, this culture, this community, this history that we claim to know. You know what I mean? I hope that the work that we're doing, like, for example, like panels like this, like with the gumbo, like with Fresh Bowl So Deaf, like the Keepers, like I want to see more organizing and collecting, documenting, archiving, like ways of gathering information and making it legible and accessible to the public. Be nice to see people coming together and thinking through something different. I would love to see, and I don't know how radical y'all want me to take this question, but I really would love to see, you know, us force artists, and I mean all artists, whoever, artists, period, you know, recording artists, performing artists, to forcing folks to really rethink the misogynoir that this entire industry is pretty much predicated upon, like through imagery, ways of, I mean, there's some artists like that's their entire career. Like that's who you is. You feel me? Like you came in here and made millions of dollars, you know, off the dehumanization of Black women. And I want to see that stop. Like enough is enough. Like it's sick. It's twisted. It's violent. You know, it's a site. Hip hop has been a site of terror and violence for so many. Like let's keep it real. You know what I mean? And I want to see that stop. And I would love to you know, to hear more sort of honest conversations, and even to see a force, you know, push people forward. Like now, let's time to push this thing forward for real. Yeah, I mean, on top of everything else that was already said, like that we should be free, just a freedom, like to show up and to record and to be butt naked or to be fully clothed, everything in between. And that there's a space for you and you don't feel that you have to be or do any one thing or another in order to have a community of listeners or in order to support, you know, your livelihood.
Wow, that's a beautiful imagination, future, and hopefully a reality for Black women in hip hop. I really do believe that the world tries to stifle Black dreams and imagination. And I think that, like, you know, once that happens, we can't imagine another world and another future. And so I thank you that's why I asked that, because I wanted to be spoken and to speak these affirmations so that it can become an ultimate reality, because these are some things that I believe are important for our future, for Black women in hip hop, but Black women in general. In this world. So thank you so much. I want to read one thing before we get into the questions. Queen D. Scott said when Nadirah, you were speaking about ownership, autonomy, and care, Queen said, care, that's the whole world. that's a whole word, excuse me. Black women are the caretakers of the world. So for us to have our own care, woo, that hit me. Yes. And you also said something about grace. We don't give Black women enough grace and care. And so thank you so much for Queen for sharing that. I want to really move on to some of these questions because people have asked really great questions. One of the questions, Safara said, curious on y'all's thoughts on capitalism and its effects on Black women. More specifically, how does capitalism minimize the space Black women are attempting and in many ways successfully trying to create? And I know, Nadirah, you touched on that a little bit. So yeah, feel free to jump in.
I feel like access is the first thing that comes to mind for me when we talk about capitalism. You know who has access at the very top, and you know once you keep moving down metaphorically, people don't have access, and that's something that it bothers me a lot because I know so many great people, so many talented people who will not ever get to or might not get to what they want to as far as creating in the time that they would like because they don't have access. And I think capitalism is so kind of just so combined with access and the inability for someone to say get a loan, you know, and also how difficult loans are and also the reality of paying a loan back for said business. I think when it comes to creating spaces, access is the biggest thing that I think of when it comes to capitalism, because if you do not have that access, if you do not have the money, and if you do not have that team and that support, you won't really be able to create that space. And the one thing for me with the gumbo is, you know, I had to do a crowdfunding campaign and it was important. And I'm thankful that we had community, which is why I'm always so big on community, especially with Black people and especially with Black women, because we do hold each other down. And if you have 100 people that give you $1, that's $100 more than you had yesterday. And if you have 100 people that give you $10, you know, that there are small things that you can do to help your platforms thrive. But it's sad to think about how many of our ideas and our platforms need so much in comparison to other people who might just be able to go into their bank account or their family's bank account, or someone can hook them up and they'll be able to thrive with whatever space they want to create. And I just know for Black women, we're creating entities and businesses and spaces at such a fast rate. And I don't remember the numbers, but it's so difficult because I want us to be able to create and not have to worry about, okay, maybe I can't release this shirt this week because I got to pay a bill, or maybe I can't host this event because I don't have enough money to do the space, or I can't even do a virtual event on Zoom because I don't have the plan to have more than 30 people. Like there's so much that goes into play that for me, it makes me sad because I know it's important to have access when it comes to these things. And that's why I'm big on community, finding your community, because your community will support you. And everybody's not rich, but like I said, even sometimes if someone's giving you $1 or sharing your Instagram or retweeting your stuff, like there are ways that you can build community that kind of helps combat these things. Obviously it's not going to combat capitalism like that. But I think those are the things that are important when it comes to just supporting Black women and what they're creating.
So the question was was erased. So I can't reread it, but the question was, how does capitalism impact the way that Black women show up within hip hop spaces?
Yep. How does capitalism minimize the space for Black women who are attempting and in many ways successfully trying to create?
I might be going far left because that's what I do. But I think, and thank you for everything that you shared, Nadirah, because you've been on fire today, sis.
Thank you. Thank you.
I just want to add to that. I think capitalism, like sometimes when we talk about artists, right? And I'm talking specifically about the so-called mainstream. I think that we like sometimes people get confused as if it's just a pure sort of natural expression, and we forget to include the marketplace. And the marketplace, you know, pretty much drives artistic expression as we as consumers sort of interface and interact with it, right? And I feel like that has definitely minimized, you know, who Black women have been, let's say, for the last, this year, 25 years, and probably even before that, you know, and that's problematic, because again, taking it back, you know, if we go back to what Cardi B said, it's like if she doesn't present in a particular way, people are not going to buy into that. Like, she knows that according to what she said out of her own mouth, she's not going to get those clicks, you know. So it's like certain things that, you know, are going to, you know, make sense. You know what I mean? Like, you do certain things, they don't make dollars, then they don't make sense. And I think that that's one thing. And I think also, like, when it comes to certain kinds of narratives and like what we're talking about. So it's not only sort of the way that we present, because I think, like, if you were to just look at some hip hop videos, rap videos, right? And since we think about it as the music, the sound, but there also, obviously, there's imagery. So like, if we had just a series of videos and we were to mute the videos, pretty much you could probably find 50 Americans from all across the country, and you would say, like, what genre of music is this? And just through the images, you would already be able to say, like, oh, this is rap music, even when the people performing, whether they're Black or white or whatever. You feel me? So it's like a certain aesthetic, which is tied to a certain, you know, sort of, which is attached to a certain kind of lavish lifestyle, which, you know, wealth and you know, extravagance. And I find that also be problematic, because we already live in, you know, this sort of very racialized capitalist environment. Hip hop pretty much boasts and brags, you know, about, you know, predatory capitalism. And that's problematic. I mean, I've heard Nicki Minaj say in interviews, like, yeah, but I'm getting money. Somebody offers a critique, and I like Nicki, but she said, like, yeah, okay, that's true, but I'm getting money. And I mean, Bell Hooks talks about this at length in what, Class Matters, Where We Stand, you know, where we as Black people, like, we trying to get free through capitalism. And I feel like that's something that we haven't really addressed in hip hop. Like, there are some people talking about it. Bell Hooks talked about it. You know what I mean? But I think we need to have more conversations about how, about what this really means, you know, when, like, pretty much this is like, for the last 30, 40 years, this has been like a consistent theme, a consistent value from artist to artist throughout the music. And it's kind of like, if you listen to that old Dead Prez album, who was that they were quoting when they say it was the wolf who was licking the blade, and as he licks the blade, it's the blood that he tastes, which entices him to keep licking the blade, but he dies in the process because he's licking his own blood. You know what I mean? So like, we're also being harmed in the process. So I just wanted to share that.
I feel like everybody said all the things about, yeah, the question of capitalism, right? And again, just to kind of echo some thoughts, so much of it is about converging on one particular image, one particular ideology. And because that at its essence, that's what capitalism is about, right? Racist capitalism is, it's like, you're always trying to one up, because it's that there is no end game. The end game is whoever can outproduce the other person, right? And so it's, in having conversations with students and younger folks, you really have to impress upon them that it is not a coincidence that the top, you know, women MCs look the way that they do and talk about the stuff that they talk about, right? Like, we cannot pretend that there's not some relationships between these things. And you know, again, the hope is that we can create a space with more diversity of thought and ways of being and looks, right? But capitalism is informing all of these different parts of what it means to be an artist in this very, very like complicated matrix. So kudos to everybody for just being brilliant.
Yes, I was taken to school on that one. Thank you so much. So someone said, I am the associate, Tamar Daggerty, forgive me if I'm not saying your name correctly. I'm the associate university librarian at Cornell University Library with responsibility for rare archival collections. We have a large hip hop archive. For those of us who are memory keepers and stewards in preserving the narrative of hip hop, how can we evolve our curatorial practices in order to become more inclusive of the voices of Black and Brown women in its collective memory? I'm also a Black woman, so this is important to me, and important that these hip hop archives are connected to the communities documented within, especially when they are collected by predominantly white institutions like Cornell University. And I can drop that question into the chat.
Well, I'll say a lot of these women who are pioneers in this are still alive. And we should be reaching out to them. We should be talking to them. We should be filming them. We should be documenting their stories. We should be doing podcasts. We should be asking how they are, because, hey, it's important to just check in on people and let them know that you care. We did an Instagram Live with Wanda D maybe 2-3 weeks ago, and that just kind of like fell into place. She didn't even really have an Instagram, and she made her Instagram, hopped on, and we talked about her performing at the Apollo and being very just presenting in a way that they weren't really used to women presenting when it came to rap. She had the leopard skin like print outfit on, and she, you know, had like, she just had this presentation that wasn't something that everyone was quote unquote ready for. It was so different. And it was her owning her sexuality in a way that people had not seen. And having that conversation with her is now something that I'm going to save and archive. And I think that's the biggest thing when it comes to, at least when I was doing, you know, my research as well, but go to these different places and these different institutions. And I'm like, dang, like this person's still alive. Like you don't have this flyer from this party, but like, and even if you talk to a lot of these OGs in rap, they'll say like, I have my flyer from my first show that I did in 1980, 1981. Like I still have all my flyers. I still have footage from this. Like the biggest thing is to reach out to these women, and more often than not, they'll love it. They'll feel so grateful and so appreciative that you are acknowledging their place as pioneers and as matriarchs in this genre. And I think that's the biggest thing, is doing events like this, but with them, and asking them questions and asking them about their experiences, and asking, hey, can you scan one of your first flyers that might have had a young MC who then ended up blowing up as like a featured performer? Like there's just so much. And I think we often forget, or sometimes people, even sometimes myself, I'm like intimidated, like, oh, I don't want to reach out to this person, because what if they, you know, what if they're busy, or what if they don't have time, or what if they're like, what is this? But those people are here. And the one thing that I've definitely learned, even when we talk about Toni Morrison, or even when we think about the past few years, of just so many of our greats who we've lost, one of the things that I always think of is, you know, I'm so glad that we're able to see their work, not because it's about labor, but you were able to see them create their art in all of their fullness. And for me, I think it's just talk to these people, like reach out to these people, let them know that you're here and you love what they've done, what they represent, what they stand for. Ask how you can support them, because I think that's also important. But just bringing them into your archiving and your curatorial processes, because they're out here.
Yeah. I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
I would just echo what Nadirah is saying about, you know, again, going back to the care element, just creating a relationship based in care rather than sort of extraction or, you know, collection, because so many of these women, young and old, have relationships to institutions that are based on extraction, right? That are solely about what can you do for me? What can you produce? What can I take from you? And so the hard work of relationship building, long-term relationship building, is incumbent on institutions that have the money, that have the kind of, you know, the capital. If you've got it to bring somebody to the campus, then you need to do that, right? Put that money behind sort of your word instead of, hey, will you give me all your stuff? All that stuff that you've worked so hard to amass and produce and share, because we want to do this thing that will bolster the profile of our institution. Like thinking about what is the relationship between the folks who are doing the collecting and the folks whose work that is being collected. And the other thing that I would say is encouraging and being in conversation with younger artists about archiving, like really getting into their communities and networks to encourage them to, like, all the stuff that you're working on is valuable. Keep it, hang on to it. Nothing is trash. Nothing is disposable. I mean, I'm so curious as an artist. I'm so curious about that part of things. Like, what are the little liner notes or little notes that people took when they were writing this verse, or where were you? Or, do you have scraps of this poster or this flyer? So really encouraging folks from a young age who are part of kind of the hip hop community to be hanging on to their stuff and recognize it as the valuable material that it is.
Akua, did you want to say anything? If not, it's okay. Okay. And I also think, like, y'all make sure y'all hold on to y'all stuff too, because people are going to, if they already are, be interviewing you and speaking with you, and you are a part of hip hop legacy and history. And so make it easy for the younger folks to, like, get access to this information. One thing I love about what Crew Make Do says about, Crew is the founder and creator of Black Lesbian Archives. She's always saying, like, if the internet is shut down, if the government decides to shut down our websites, what do we have? We have each other. And so beyond this, I think it's important to do archival work, but like you said, Sam, is to, like, build community and treat people with fairness and speak with your elders, sit at their feet. Literally, I mean, I know COVID has prevented that, but get on a Zoom conversation with them, or pick up the phone or call them and contact them. Even with our Black feminists, a lot of people, Barbara Smith is still here, Demita Frazier is still here, Dr. Margot Okazawa Ray, she's still here. So let's revel in that. Yeah, so I know that we're closing up with time, and I know I don't want to belabor our guests. There is one more question. So if the panelist wants to answer one more, feel free. But if not, I understand, like, everyone's been talking for such a long time. And I know it's a Monday. It's International Women's Day, but it's also Monday and people have work. So
question, I'm ready.
Okay, thank you. Catherine Joel asked, someone pointed out to me recently that hip hop has been taught in college courses for at least 25 years now, but its origin story and narrative as taught has remained relatively the same, focusing on founding fathers and 4 pillars. How might we reconsider / recraft this framework for students in light of this work, collecting and archiving? So I can drop that in the chat too, if you want to reread it.
I'll just jump in real quick with some ideas that I've heard, but some of you might be familiar with Dr. Kira Gaunt. She works closely with the Keepers and has published a wonderful work on the relationships between girls and our play practice, Black girl play practices, and kind of hip hop and popular musical forms. And she suggested doing some work with Wikipedia, like having folks actively go in and re-edit entries and enter in information. And, that's something that I've heard other folks have done within their classroom, is have these, I forget what the term is, but there's like a kind of practice where people will do this in the classroom about a specific topic and go into a Wikipedia page, either create a new one or edit the work that's there. And that can be a really meaningful way to engage with your class, your class, and have them feel like they're a part of that history and see the work of creating a new narrative, like in practice. So that's definitely one way to do that. Oh, Wikiathons. Thank you, Caroline, last night.
And also check out Kara's book, The Games Black Girls Play. It is it's a game changer. I would, and I don't really have much to offer in this moment, because yeah, The Games Black Girls Play, because I feel like everything has been said. But I do think, as I said, like we're talking about a radical, reorienting. I think looking at Black women's writings on hip hop, looking at what women have offered. I mean, there was just a book that just came out last year, The Essential History of Hip Hop, the Mother Lode, as I mentioned, Kara Gordon. I mean, Trisha Rose has written about women in hip hop. I mean, Gwendolyn Pugh. I mean, the list goes on and on. Again, to the break of dawn. And I think that also sort of helps us to sort of create a new point of entry. And then from there, it's just a rabbit hole, because there's so much information out. There's a lot of information out there, although it's almost like we're fighting against a narrative that we've been taught, like some mythology, that it doesn't exist, right? Because we just kind of have accepted that this is sort of a boys' club, and it's really not. Like, sisters have been holding it down and doing the work the entire time, but not to reiterate what has already been said.
Oh, and bring the gumbo into your classroom, and when the Keeper Archive is present in the world, of course, bring that into the classroom space as well.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, definitely. Just to echo what they said, there are so many books written by Black women about hip hop that you should read. And if you need like a JSTOR account, like I use my little sister's JSTOR account. I haven't been in college in a very long time, but that's where I go to read about the things that have been written about women in hip hop, about sexuality in hip hop, about space in hip hop, about capitalism in hip hop, just about so many different connections. There's so much. Please, like, oh yes, JSTOR access, I love it. But please go look at what has been written. And I know this has already been said, but these women are here. Please pay them to come into your spaces. They will gladly, well, I can't speak for everyone, but like offering them the opportunity to come into your space to talk about what they've lived and what they helped build, and their experiences, I just think is so important. And I don't think people often think about it, because they're like, oh, this is history, so I got to bring in someone newer who can contextualize it, which is great. But these women are there, and I think we'd be remiss to not always involve them at every step of the process.
I'm sorry, I keep jumping in. I just want to say one more. Shout out to Martha Diaz, who's here. Also, if you're interested, look up her work. She's been invested in women and hip hop archival work for a very long time. And actually, we're part of an amazing initiative between a group of different women within the hip hop space. And if you go to Instagram.com, Hip Hop Education Center, you can see flyers for this month-long programming with kind of clubhouse rooms and other conversations, panel discussions that's going to be going on this month. So definitely, again, just to reiterate what everyone has said, people are doing this work. Look us up.
And this has been such a fruitful conversation. Oh, I wanted to say, if anyone's interested in learning about Nahanda Abiodun and her work and being a radical political organizer, and finding fleeing to Cuba because of her political radical affiliations and being set up, and actually being considered the mother of Cuban hip hop because she introduced hip hop to Cuba. That's an interesting conversation or piece of information I learned actually a month or so ago through the Malcolm X grassroots movement about Nahanda and Assata Shakur. So that's my little offering. I thought that was interesting about radical political activism in hip hop and Black women. So, but first and foremost, before we end, I just want to say thank you to Nadirah, SAMMUS, and Akua for your patience and your grace and your kindness. I just want to say I accidentally put 5:30 as the time when it was really 5 p.m. and I was like freaking out, but thank you to everyone for coming in. Thank you to the YouTube live folks watching. This has been such a fruitful conversation. I've learned a lot, and thank you for all that you do. And please support the Gumbo. I put the links in. Please support the Keepers. Follow Akua, follow SAMMUS, follow Nadirah, invest in their work. And yeah, just thank you so much for being here. I hope y'all better have learned something, because I did. Y'all better have learned something. I always learn something all the time. So thank you. Is there anything else anyone would have plugged before we?
Yeah, I would actually. And I mean, this is so unhip hop to plug something at an event. But I just wanted to share that. So the next event that we're doing, that the Keepers are doing, is on April 3rd. It's a new event series called the Sonic Book Club. And the Sonic Book Club is basically like, it's just like any other book club, but we're taking women's recorded works, rap albums, basically, and, you know, offering and inviting a community in to offer a collective close reading and deep dive. And everything that we sort of collect together, the intellectual, the spiritual, the sexual, whatever, we'll use that to populate the archive. And we also get to enshrine the actual work. And the beautiful thing is we actually invite the artists. So it's like a 2-hour event. First half, we will come together as a community. The second half, we invite the artist in and we can engage her. And so it's April 3rd. Right now, we haven't yet put the information out, but it's definitely happening. So for folks who are interested, and you really should be interested, because this is about to be all the way popping, and that's on Mary Had a Little Lamb. So I need y'all to come to Follow the Keepers, hit up followthekeepers.com. You could even write me at akua@followthekeepers.com. You could even go on Instagram at Follow the Keepers, or just follow Akua Naru. At some point, I'll post something between now and, you know, Father's Day. But in any case, yeah, April 3rd, that's what's up. And what's important to share here before we get off is we're going to do this brilliant album, Pieces in Space, because the love has to start at home, y'all. So my dear sister, but I'm also a very big fan, I have to admit, who else to just have her record like right here, like, oh, as a matter of fact. So we're going to invite, you know, the brilliant producer, scholar, rapper, SAMMUS in, and we're about to go all the way in for our sister and her, you know, and just offer the love of her work. So for anyone who's interested, please hit us up. And yeah, I'll be looking forward to seeing you. There are only 20 spaces. We only invite 20 participants in, or else it'll be just too much to go deep. So if you shallow and superficial, please don't contact us. Don't hit us up. Like, we're going very, very deep with this. Okay, thank you.
That's so amazing. That's so dope. I mean, wow. This is going to be really great. Does anyone else want to plug anything? Feel free to plug any upcoming events before we end the call.
Just go on the Gumbo's Instagram at THEGUMBO. We'll have some announcements coming up soon that will be great. I'm very excited about them.
Yes, and Nadirah, I saw that you have this like limited edition tee.
Yes, we just dropped a t-shirt today that says "Women Are Hip Hop History." So it's limited edition. So they all sell out. They are gone. We are not bringing them back. But we wanted to create a little something that highlights that, hey, we are not an omission within this space. We're also not an aside within this space. We're also not a footnote within this space. We are truly the history of this culture and this genre. So that is for sale right now on thegumbo.net/shop if you'd like to get it. And our people don't play, so please don't be mad at me if it's gone, because I'm only doing one drop. Only doing one drop. But yes, please follow the gumbo. We have some great announcements coming up soon.
Yes, I will be picking up mine after this call. I hope it does not sell out in between now and then. I just wanted to plug, so Queen D. Scott is on the call, who's an amazing rapidemic. We connected over a Clubhouse room, but she's someone who's in academic space. She's at Berkeley, she's an assistant professor, and she also, she has so many titles. If you could like put them in the chat, but we're creating a space, and we're working to create a space for conversations between folks who are in sort of this artist, performer, academic universe in hip hop, to just sort of express some of our frustrations and joys and pleasures and all of those things. So feel free to hit me up, and we're kind of building this community up, and would love to be in conversation with you if you're in that universe.
Definitely. I'm about to put Queen D. Scott's info here. Yes, to read more about Queen. I also wanted to share, before we go, a comment that Nico Case Official shared on Black Men Radicals about this wonderful event. They said, thank you, Black Men Radicals, the Gumbo, Akua, SAMMUS, and Nadirah. That was so inspiring and enlightening. I hope there's a way to rewatch. I want to pass it on. Thank you. So, yeah.
Hey, love it. And thank y'all so much too. This was a great talk. I'm like a nerd for this. I love this so much. And it's great to connect with other people who also love this. And y'all are also creating art within this space. And I just feel like that's extra important to highlight, because it's so necessary, so important, and also so difficult sometimes. So shout out to y'all.
Thank y'all. Well, thank you everyone for joining. Nadirah, SAMMUS, Akua, it's always a pleasure. I appreciate y'all so much. And thank you everybody. This video, this event will live on Black Men Radicals YouTube. So yes, feel free to tap in again and learn from this brilliance constantly. So thank you so much. Have a good night, everyone.
Bye, y'all.
Bye.
Bye.